everyone. As I promised in class, I will be creating short videos explaining those points that are sticky, points that we seem not to be able to get across to some of the students, and I will be posting them for you to review in your own time. This week's key point was how to create keyframes and how to manipulate them through time. So I will create this short video to explain how to go about doing that. In class, what we did is we imported a file, an Illustrator file that was a layered file that contained separate elements from a logo that I had just grabbed from a website. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that same file into this project. I'm going to do that by going File, Import, File. Now, when I do that, I am given the option as to how I want to import the files. In this case, we want the logo for Animation AI, and as you can see, there's the thumbnail showing us that it is the exact same file. And I have three options as I explained in class. Option 1 is footage, which will grab all the layers in the file and it will pancake them into one. Basically, it will flatten the file upon import. Now, this will not actually flatten the actual Illustrator file. The Illustrator file isn't touched. It will remain whatever it is in your hard drive. But for the purposes of what it will do within After Effects, it will act as if it was one single unit. What we want to do in this case is import it as a composition and retain its layer sizes. That will give us the flexibility to manipulate each layer separately, and each layer will remain the size it is as it was created in Illustrator. So doing that, let me go ahead and click Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, and I'll go ahead and import. That action created two items. Item number 1 is the logo for Animation Composition, which receives the same name as the file that I imported, and it will create a folder that contains all of the layers for that particular file as separate items. It will actually import them as separate pieces of footage. So I can go ahead and use these if I need to in any other subsequent compositions if I needed to, or I can even make compositions out of those items if I needed to. In this case, we don't, but know that you can actually access them separately. Let me go ahead and double click on that composition logo for animation so that it opens, and you'll notice that the background is black just as it was in class. So I need to change the background color so that we can actually see what the layers look like. To do that, I'll press Command K or Control K on the PC, and I will go ahead and change the color of the background to white in this case. I'll click OK, and now I see all of my layers. Now remember that we created this big circle up at the top and this bottom circle to indicate the position of the guides on which the anchor point for the creative graphic and the design studio pieces will be anchored. And what that means is when I rotate them, I am going to rotate these guys, the creative graphic and the design studio. I'm going to rotate them as if they were coming around in that particular circle, as if they were following the edge of the circle. So all I really need those two graphics for the big circles is just to tell me where the center point for that circle is. So I'll do that by clicking on the top graphic this time, and there's the anchor point for that one. And let me click on the bottom one, and there's the anchor point for the bottom circle. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate my rulers, and I'll do that by going under View, Show Rulers, and with the bottom circle selected, I'll go ahead and click and drag from the ruler down so that I can create a guide and snap it to that center point of that circle. There you go. And I'll do the same. Then I'll just go ahead and select the top circle, and I'll do the exact same thing for that one. That is the point. These two guides is where the center points for the creative graphic and the design studio titles will go. So with that done, I don't need to see those two circles anymore. So I'll go ahead and turn them off in my composition window by clicking on the little leftmost switch, the eye, and then I'll go ahead and select the creative graphic first, switch my tool to the pan behind tool or the anchor tool, and then I'll go ahead and start dragging that anchor down. Now you'll notice that I am dragging, and as I am dragging, I am going to press Shift so that it snaps to the y-axis and it also snaps to the guide. So let this serve as a reminder that if you want something to snap, if you want to use the shift key to snap, you need to first start the action that you're doing, and then as you're doing the action, you press shift and keep it pressed. So for example, in this case in Design Studio, let me select Design Studio. I don't have shift selected. I'll click and drag on the anchor point. As I am moving it, I am going to press shift so that it snaps to the y-axis, and then as I'm getting closer to the guide, it will snap to the guide. Then I'll let go of the mouse first, and then I let go of shift. If you press on something, if you press shift first and then you click on something, you're going to either select it or deselect it. That's why you need to start the action first before you actually press the shift key. The shift key is the modifier, and you use it as you're doing the after you started the action. If you do it before you start the action, then it's going to the program is going to read it as you're trying to select something else besides whatever you have selected, just like you would if you were multiple selecting in Illustrator. So with that done, this is the very first position for those two anchor points, and now what we want to do is create rotation values for both of those titles. So I'll go ahead and select both titles in my timeline, and you'll notice that I'll select the create a graphic first, then I'll press shift. Now while I'm pressing shift, I'll click on Design Studio, and you'll notice that it allows me to select more than one thing at a time. Now with that done, I am going to use my shortcut to go into my 15 frame mark, which is where I believe we started the animation, and at that point I'm going to create my actually, you know what? This animation happened between 15 frames and 1 second. Since the graphics are positioned where they are going to be at the end of the animation, then I'm going to start animating backwards. And what that means is I'm going to go to the 1 second mark, and I'll do that this time by clicking on the empty code on the leftmost corner of my timeline, and I'll enter 100. That is 1 second, 0 frames, and then I'll go ahead and with the two layers still selected, I'll press the R key for rotation. You'll notice that the rotation transformation opened up for both of them at the same time, and that's because both of them were selected. At this time, I'm going to activate the little swatch for one of them, and you'll notice that both of them will get activated because they're both selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my 15 frame mark, enter 15 and return in this empty code, and then I am going to enter the value -180 for one of them. As I hit return, you'll notice that the second one also takes that value, and a new keyframe has been generated for both, again because both of them are selected. Now when I scrub my video, I'll see that my graphics fly in as if they were rotating in just the way they looked in class. With that done, the next animation was the star. And to do that, let me switch my tool back to my arrow tool so that I can select the star. And the star zoomed or scaled from 0 to 100% from 1 second to 115, if I recall correctly. So I'll go ahead and select both the creative graphic and the Design Studio, and I'll press the R key to close the rotation transformation. And now I'll select the star. With the star selected, I am going to use both rotation and scaling. The star rotated once as it was scaling up. So I'll go ahead and select R for rotation, Shift, S for scaling. So R for rotation and S for scale. But since I want to do both, I want to have both of them open at the same time, I'll choose R first and then press the Shift key and press the S key to open up the scaling value. Now with those two open, what I'll go ahead and stop. Again, this is the final position of my star. So it would follow that I could just go ahead and jump to 115, which is the ending point for the animation, and create keyframes for both of these. And then jump back to 1 second, 100, and animate backwards. So the scaling value at that point would be 0, and the scaling value at the rotation value would be -1. So that when I scrub my video, my star rotates, as you see, and it scales up. It is at this point that two lines on either side of it come in, and those are the top left line and top right line. And I'm going to animate those. I could animate backwards, but this time again, I'm going to animate forward so that you see how we achieve. Actually, I'll animate backwards. It's a lot easier, a lot faster. So this animation happens between 1:15 and 2 seconds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the 2 second mark, 200. And with the top and left lines selected, I'll go ahead and call their position value. I'll hit stopwatch so that I have the final positions at the 2 second mark, and then I'll go ahead and go back to the 1:15 mark and select this line, move it out this way, select this line and drag it out this way. You'll notice that I created a path of motion for either one of them. When I select them, you see the little path for the position change. When I scrub the video, the lines come in and they stop right at that point at the 2 second mark. Then I had them bouncing for about 3 frames. And the way I achieved that was by going down 3 frames, and to move 3 frames at a time, you can either use your page up or page down keys on your keyboard. Page down will take you downstream, which means towards the right hand side, and page up will move you towards the left hand side or upstream, meaning earlier in time. I need to go 3 times downstream. Now, for those of you who don't have a keyboard that has page up or page down, you can achieve the exact same thing by using these little buttons on the preview window, these 2 buttons up here. So I'll use the shortcuts. I'll go page down 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and then I really eyeballed this action, what I'm about to do. I didn't do anything by the numbers. So I just went ahead and grabbed this guy and moved it up, just a little, moved it back a little bit to the left. Then I grabbed this guy and I moved it back just a tad to the right. And then I went down another 3 frames, page down, page down, page down. And this time, what I'm going to do is I am going to select the previous frame, this frame right here. I'm going to select that frame, and then I'm going to copy it and paste it right where the line is, where the marker is. So with the frame selected, I'll go ahead and Control C on the PC or Command C on the Mac. I'll go ahead and say Control C, Control V to paste, or Command V on the Mac. And then I'll do the same thing for the other layer. This is the frame I want, and then I'll paste it in that point. So with that done, what that does is it allows me to, let me zoom out of this thing for just a second. There we go. Now, if I scrub my video, you'll see that the little lines bounce just a little bit as they hit, and they come back in. So now that we're a little bit more clear, this frame and this frame share the exact same values because one is a copy of the other. Now, same thing applies for the star. At the start, when these 2 lines hit it at the 2 second mark, and I'm pressing shift as I am scrubbing so that it snaps to the keyframes. So now I'm at the 2 second mark. What the star does is when it gets hit, the star's scaling increases. So I'll set up an original keyframe right here where it starts at 100%. Then 3 frames down, it would go to about 130%. I'll say 135%. I'm just going to exaggerate it a little bit. Then I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3 downstream, and I'm going to shrink it to about 90%, and I'm going to go down again 3 frames, 1, 2, 3 downstream to 110%, and then again 1, 2, 3, and then 100%. So that action gives me this little bouncy feeling. To deselect what I have selected out, I can click anywhere in the gray area, and now you can see that there's no guides, so it'll be a little bit more clear to see what the action is. You'll see that there's a short bounce as the star gets hit by those lines. With that done, the next animation is the coming in of the unique title, which zooms in from, I want to say 215 to 3, and it zooms to 100%, from 0 to 100%. And it does a short bounce just like the star, what we just did with the star. It has a little bounce like that when it hits. So it zooms in from 0 to about 130, and then it goes back down to about 85. Then I pushed it down to 115, and then I made it 0. Those are the values for keyframes. And roughly speaking, they can be between 3 and 4 in between frames. between those keyframes. And then finally the lines at the bottom that zoom in from change position from left and right, just to basically assemble themselves at the point that where this ends. So I think that this gets you a pretty good idea as to what you will need to do to complete this exercise, and it hopefully will help you with your logo animations. I will be sending an email with this video so that you guys have access to the video, and also giving you a little bit more explanation as to what I expect for that logo animation. Hope this helps.